As many of you know, one of my favorite exercises to get better at music making is transcribing and analyzing drum patterns, and I've analyzed quite a few of them. Every once in a while I discover some great or unconventional tricks and techniques that I immediately mark down as must-try. And in this episode I'll show you 7 of my absolute favorites to use as inspiration for your own beats. So let's get started. Hello everyone, this is... You're probably familiar with Harold Faltermeyer's Axel F, either as the theme to Beverly Hills Cop or that crazy frog ringtone. Listen to the drum pattern with the bass line on top. Did you notice that every time the bass plays a note, there's also a kick or a snare playing? They mirror the bass rhythm, or vice versa, who knows what came first. That gives it much more impact. Definitely something to try for your own bass lines. Adamski's Killer does something similar, but with more drums than just the kick and snare. The drum machines used in this song are the Roland TR-909 and the Yamaha RX 120. The latter is a preset rhythm machine without a sequencer, but you can send MIDI notes to it. And that's what Adamski did. In an interview, he said that he accidentally sent the notes of the bass line to the drum machine instead, which triggers a specific sequence of percussion instruments. This is not what you hear on the finished track though, so he must have only used this as a starting point. But if you shift some notes around, like this, you get the correct percussion layer. Put that over the 909 part and presto, here's the drum track for Killer. Bottom line, send your bass line to a sampler with lots of drum and percussion sounds and see where this takes you. The great thing about having sound controls on your drums, like decay or tuning, is that these often have a range that's much wider than what's actually required for normal drum sounds. For example, low toms can often be used as an excellent rhythmic rumbling bass layer if they're tuned down low enough. Cymbals can become an atmospheric, noisy texture. The 909 snare has this snappy parameter, which essentially mixes in some noise. That's what's supposed to be the snare wire sound. If you remove that, then what's left is the sound of the drum head, which can pass as a higher kick or tom. Björk's Hunter uses this to great effect by contrasting this stripped-down sound with the kick in a call-and-response-like manner. And now we'll slowly morph it back to the more recognizable 909 snare sound, which gives the impression that we're actually using 3 different instruments. So, try using your drum machine's instruments not only in the way it says on the box. Give them a different role and explore how far the sound controls can take you. A hi-hat on a real drum kit can be super expressive. From the closing chick sound to varying degrees of foot pressure that adjust the openness of the hi-hat, there are many ways to get different sonic textures out of it. So, how can we bring some of this variation into electronic drum beats? If you're using an 808 or 606 inspired machine, then there's actually an option built right into it. By activating both the closed and open hat on the same step, you get a third hi-hat sound. Marvin Gaye's Sexual Healing is a good example for this. But you could also combine the sounds from 2 drum machines. That's what Hardfloor did for Acperience 1. The 909 brings a raspy wash of hi-hats and cymbals to the table, while the 808 delivers more focused, shorter closed hats that anchor everything down. This might require some post-processing for the sounds to behave well with each other, but it is a really great combo. This 2-drum machine approach is incredibly popular in techno and house music. The 909 was often paired with the 707, like here in John Tejada's Stabilizer. The 909 does the bulk of the work, and from the 707 we only take the closed hat. It has a very different texture, which adds that extra cohesiveness. Of course, you're not just limited to hi-hats. Toms and congas come in different pitches, so who's to say we're not allowed to have more than one snare as well? About 2 years ago, while transcribing Orbital's Halcyon On On, I spent entirely too much time searching for the original samples, since the pattern just doesn't work without them. Except for the kick, the sounds all come from the Roland R8 drum machine, and the track uses not only 1, but 3 of the R8 snare sounds: electronic snare, fat snare, and TR-909 snare. They all vary in pitch and snappiness, and when combined, this creates a nice sense of movement and interest. That can even work well if you're using pitch variations of the same sound. This is a Lindrum adaptation I made of Fortet's Love Cry. Instead of a monotone rimshot like this one, I used 3 different pitches, which supports this hypnotic cyclical feeling of the pattern. Sometimes people are concerned that the classic drum machine sounds are overused. Well, personally I don't think I'll ever get tired of a good drum machine beat, but don't be afraid to process the instruments and turn them into something else. There's an incredible amount of potential here. I mean, take a look at what Skinny Puppy did to their drums. Is this an 808 or an evil demon caught on tape? Nobody knows. One of my favorite processed 808 sounds is from Childish Gambino's Sweatpants. Here's my version of it. We start with the naked clavis sound. Cute and harmless. The first step is to run it through a plate-style reverb to give it an actual space to live in. Don't hesitate to turn the mix all the way up. With all this added depth and dimension, we can now use a pitch shifter to bring everything into a lower frequency region. And with some pretty aggressive EQing, we're adding more body to the sound. A transient shaper can bring back some of the snappiness we lost from the reverb. Gives a whole different vibe to those claves, doesn't it? You might be familiar with Afrika Bambaataa's electroclassic Planet Rock, but did you know that its beat is a mashup of 2 other tracks? They basically took Kraftwerk's Numbers and Captain Sky's Super Sporm, rebuilt it on an 808, and used that as the foundation for their song. Take a look at this. The kick and snare pattern from Numbers is absolutely identical to Planet Rock's main pattern, in both bars. The hi-hats in the Kraftwerk track are constantly changing, while the Planet Rock hats are fixed, but the general feeling is the same. The second pattern was taken from Super Sporm's break part. There are a handful of variations in it, but this one comes closest. See? There's the double hit in the first bar and that telltale kick on the 2E. Slightly different ending though, presumably so it loops better. The hi-hats are also very similar, but Planet Rock pulls the open hat ahead by a 16th, which sounds even funkier. So, take a clue from the Soul Sonic Force and try mashing the rhythms of your favorite tracks together to create your own Frankenstein beat. Fun fact, Kraftwerk's Karl Bartos revealed in an interview that the iconic beat of Numbers was inspired by Do You Wanna Dance, a song by Cliff Richard and the Shadows. This is what the drummer plays during the intro. And you can indeed see that the beginning of the second bar forms the basis of the Kraftwerk classic. In an unquantized recording, your human timing is stored as microtiming values or timing offsets inside of each step of the sequencer. But microtiming is much more versatile. You can use it as a programming tool to create some pretty interesting rhythmic effects. The beat of Logic's Wake Up, for example, has a humanized timing. But I want to show you a specific trick, so we'll start with a completely quantized version of it. Now I'll grab all of the hi-hats and shift them to the right, roughly in the ballpark of 96th note. Listen how this changes the feeling of the track. It sounds much more laid back, almost lazy. So experiment. See what happens to the groove when you shift an entire instrument to either side. You can also use microtiming to fake swing. We just have to move the even steps to the right. This allows us to be selective about how much swing we put into which part of the pattern. Mopedbart by Hubbabubbaklubb is a fantastic track that uses this technique. This is the pattern without any swing or microtiming. And now we'll nudge this step to the right and delay it by about a 96th note. Let's also pull the following step ahead by a little bit. Not much. What we've essentially done now is we added swing to only this region of the pattern. If instead we had used the swing setting of the sequencer, there would also be swing here, here, and here. But now there's this contrast and tension between those parts that makes it extra funky. Especially in context with the other patterns. When you put effects on your drums, it's really easy to overdo it. While it might sound good in the moment, drowning your drums in delay repeats or reverb washes can clutter your mix and strain your listeners' ears. One strategy is to use effects very much like an accent, something you sprinkle on to select parts. Instead of drenching the entire canvas in a bright and saturated color, you strategically place it so it can actually stand out and contrast with the rest of the composition. This would be called a spot effect or an effects throw. On Alexander Robotnick's Problèmes d'amour, for example, there's a delay on the hand clap, a tad faster than a 16th note. That would get on your nerves real quick though. Instead, we put the delay only on a very few select hits during the chorus to add some extra oomph. If you're on a machine with built-in effects that can be parameter locked to the steps, then hooray for you, this is much easier to do. This is Peggy Gou's I Go. It features a 16th note delay with plenty of repeats on the rim shot. But as you can hear, it results in a busy mess if you put it on the entire rim shot track. So I'll turn the delay send up only on the last step in each bar. And on most sequencers you don't have to do this, but on the TR-6S, like in a DAW, I have to turn it down again right after. This cleans up everything very nicely and gives us the same airy feeling, but with a much tidier mix. FX Twin also loves to use spot effects in his tracks, so if you want to dig deeper into that, then check out this video. If, on the other hand, you want to go to 11 on your drums all the time, then this is possible, but it would be a good idea to adjust your drum pattern accordingly. Make it less complex to give the effects enough room to breathe. No, even simpler. That's the spirit. And maybe we should get rid of the hi-hats entirely. More space for synthesizers in the mix, and we can let a snappy 16th note bassline provide the glue. Watch out though, on synthwave tracks there's at least one mandatory tom fill per song. We hope this episode gave you some motivation or new ideas to create and spice up your own drum beats. And as always, a big shout out to all of our patrons. Thanks to your support, we can keep making these videos.